Jake stood near the curved wall of the reception hall, his eyes scanning the crowd for the 100th time that evening. The diplomatic summit on Harmony Point Station had been going smoothly for 3 days now, and he was starting to relax. That was his first mistake. The hall buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages, some spoken, and others conveyed through flashing lights or chemical signals. Jake had been a security officer for the Human Diplomatic Corps for 2 years, but he still found these galactic gatherings overwhelming. So many species, so many different ways of thinking and communicating. Captain Lisa Hammond led the human delegation with practiced ease, discussing trade agreements with a group of tall, skinned aliens whose names Jake could never pronounce correctly. Humans were relatively new to this whole galactic community thing, only making first contact 15 years ago. Most of the older species still saw them as primitive newcomers, useful for their stubborn problem-solving abilities, but not much else. Jake checked his watch. 2 more hours until his shift ended. He rolled his shoulders, trying to ease the tension from standing in one place for so long. The formal security uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable, designed more for appearance than function. A flash of blue caught his attention. One of them had entered the hall, surrounded by guards in ceremonial armor. They were an old empire, powerful and proud, with skin that shimmered like polished sapphire under the station lights. Their culture valued strength and honor above all else. But this was different from the others Jake had seen. Smaller, younger, moving with uncertain steps despite the confident guards around her. She wore robes of deep purple that marked her as royalty. Princess, if Jake remembered the briefing correctly. The heir to the throne, attending her first major diplomatic function. The princess looked around the hall with obvious curiosity, her large golden eyes taking in every detail. When those eyes landed on the human delegation, she hesitated, then started walking toward them. Her guards followed, looking uncomfortable with her spontaneous decision. Jake straightened slightly. This was unusual. They typically kept to themselves during these events, considering most other species beneath their notice. But here was their princess, approaching the humans directly. "Greetings," Princess said in heavily accented English as she reached Captain Hammond. "I hope I do not interrupt. I wanted to meet the humans. You are very different from the others here." Hammond smiled diplomatically. "Your Highness, we're honored by your interest. I'm Captain Lisa Hammond. This is our delegation." The princess looked at each human in turn, fascination clear in her expression. "Your world is called Earth, yes. I have read about it in the archives. A dangerous planet with extreme weather and many predators. How did your species survive?" "We learned to adapt," Hammond replied, "to work together and solve problems creatively." Nodded slowly. "Fascinating. On my world, the strong survive through power and combat skill, but you survived through cooperation." She paused, seeming to consider something. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that approach as well." Jake remained alert while the conversation continued, but he allowed himself a small smile. The princess seemed genuinely interested, not condescending like some of the other aliens they had dealt with. She asked questions about Earth's history, human culture, even what foods they ate. Hammond answered patiently, clearly pleased by this unexpected diplomatic opportunity. The atmosphere in the hall changed suddenly. Jake felt it before he could identify the source, his combat instincts prickling with warning. Conversations grew quieter. Several groups of aliens moved subtly toward the exits. A delegation of entered the hall. They were a reptilian species, covered in dark green scales with cold yellow eyes. Ambassador led them, his presence filling the room with barely concealed hostility. They had territorial disputes with that went back centuries. Everyone knew they hated each other. His eyes fixed on Princess immediately. A thin smile crossed his face, showing rows of sharp teeth. He approached with deliberate slowness, making sure everyone noticed. "Princess," he said, his voice carrying across the now quiet hall. How interesting to see you here, so far from your mother's protection. I hope you are enjoying your first summit. These events can be so dangerous for the inexperienced." The threat in his words was obvious. Guards tensed, hands moving toward their weapons, but they could not attack without proof of hostile intent. That was the law of neutral stations like Harmony Point. "Ambassador," replied with forced calm, "I am always safe among honorable species who respect diplomatic protocols." Smile widened. "Of course, Your Highness, of course." He moved away, but Jake noticed several of his entourage spreading through the hall. They positioned themselves strategically, watching the princess. Jake's hand moved closer to his own weapon, a simple plasma pistol that felt inadequate compared to the advanced armaments most aliens carried. The reception continued, but the mood had soured. Hammond tried to resume her conversation with the princess, but was distracted now, watching the warily. After a few more minutes, she excused herself, her guards forming a protective circle as they moved toward the refreshment area. Jake followed at a distance. Something felt wrong. He had learned to trust that feeling during his military service before joining the diplomatic corps. It had saved his life more than once. The attack came without warning. A servant, one who had been moving through the crowd offering drinks, suddenly changed direction. His movements became sharp and purposeful. His hand reached into his serving tray and pulled out a thin, gleaming blade that sparked with contained plasma energy. Jake saw it happen in slow motion. The assassin moved toward Princess's back, blade raised. Her guards were looking outward, watching for threats from the crowd, not from a trusted servant. The princess had no idea of the danger behind her. Jake's body moved before his mind finished processing the threat. Years of training took over. He sprinted forward, covering the distance in seconds that felt like hours. Other people in the hall were just beginning to notice, just starting to shout warnings. He hit the princess hard, wrapping his arms around her and driving them both toward the floor. The plasma blade whistled through the space where she had been standing a moment before. Then Jake felt searing pain across his back and shoulder as the assassin redirected his strike, unable to stop the blade's momentum. The weapon burned through Jake's security uniform and into his flesh. The pain was incredible, like being branded with a white-hot iron. But he held position, keeping his body between the princess and the attacker, protecting her with his own flesh. Shouts erupted throughout the hall. Security forces swarmed forward. Jake saw the assassin, now clearly revealed as an agent in disguise, try to strike again. But other guards reached them, weapons firing. The collapsed, his mission failed. Jake's vision blurred. The pain in his back was overwhelming now, spreading through his entire body. He could smell his own burned skin, but he could feel Princess breathing beneath him, alive and unharmed. That was what mattered. "Do not move him," someone commanded in heavily accented English. Guards surrounded them now, weapons drawn. Jake felt himself being carefully lifted away from the princess. He caught a glimpse of her face, her golden eyes wide with shock and something else he could not identify. Medics rushed forward. Jake tried to speak, to ask if the princess was safe, but words would not come. The pain was too much now, dragging him down into darkness. The last thing he saw before consciousness left him was a tall female entering the hall, her robes marking her as someone of extreme importance. Queen, he thought dimly, the princess's mother. Her face was unreadable as she looked down at the human bleeding on her daughter's behalf. Then darkness claimed him, and Jake knew nothing more. Pain woke Jake before consciousness fully returned. His back burned like fire, each breath sending fresh waves of agony through his body. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Easy now," a familiar voice said. "You took a plasma blade to the back. You're lucky to be alive." Jake forced his eyes open. The room around him was strange, all smooth curves and soft blue lighting. Medical equipment he did not recognize surrounded his bed, making quiet humming sounds. Dr. Amy Wright stood beside him, her face showing relief mixed with professional concern. "Amy," Jake's voice came out rough and weak, "where are we?" "Still on Harmony Point in their main medical facility. You've been unconscious for 2 days." Amy checked one of the alien monitors, frowning slightly. "The medical staff has been amazing, actually. They've never treated a human before, but they followed my instructions perfectly. Your injuries were severe." Jake tried to process this information. 2 days. He remembered the attack, throwing himself between the blade and the princess. "Is she okay, princess?" "She's fine. Not a scratch on her, thanks to you." Amy smiled slightly. "She's actually been here several times wanting to see you. I've had to send her away because you needed rest, but I don't think she's going to take no for an answer much longer." As if summoned by those words, the door to the medical room opened. Princess entered, followed by 2 guards who looked uncomfortable. The princess wore simpler robes today, pale blue instead of royal purple. She carried a small box made of crystalline material. "He is awake," said her golden eyes lighting up. "I felt it. I knew he would wake today." Amy looked between them, then diplomatically excused herself. "I'll be right outside if you need anything, Jake." Approached the bed slowly, as if afraid she might cause Jake more pain. Her guards remained by the door, expressionless. She set the crystalline box on a nearby table, then stood awkwardly, seeming unsure what to say. "How do you feel?" she finally asked. "Like I got stabbed with a plasma blade," Jake replied, attempting humor despite the pain. "But I'll live. How are you?" "I am unharmed because of you." His voice grew soft. "You did not hesitate. You did not calculate odds or wait for orders. You simply moved to protect me. Why?" Jake thought about that. Why had he reacted so instantly? "I saw someone in danger, someone who needed help. I didn't really think about it." "That is what amazes everyone," said. "A warrior would have calculated the risk to himself first. Most species would have. But you just acted. My mother says this is something unique about humans, that you protect others without thinking of yourselves first." She picked up the crystalline box and opened it. Inside was a pendant made of some kind of glowing amber stone, carved into an intricate pattern. "This is from my world. It is called a life stone. When someone saves your life in our culture, you are bound to them by honor. The debt can never be truly repaid, but we give these as recognition." Carefully placed the pendant on Jake's bedside table. "I wanted you to know that I understand what you did, that I will never forget." Before Jake could respond, the door opened again. This time, Queen entered and the entire atmosphere in the room changed. She was tall, even for her skin a deeper blue than her daughter's. Power radiated from her like heat from a star. Her guards filled the doorway behind her. "Leave us," the Queen commanded, bowed quickly and left with her guards. Jake found himself alone with one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy, wearing nothing but medical wrappings and unable to stand. Queen studied him for a long moment. "Jake, that is your name." "Yes, your majesty." Jake tried to sit up and failed, pain shooting through his back. "Do not move. Your injuries are still healing." The Queen pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, which surprised Jake. Royalty usually did not lower themselves to eye level with others. "I have been investigating what happened at the reception. I have watched the security recordings many times." She leaned forward slightly. "My guards, who are trained from childhood to protect the royal family, froze for 3 full seconds when the attack came. In that time, the assassin would have killed my daughter. But you, a human security officer with no special training and protection details, moved instantly. You crossed 12 meters in under 2 seconds and put yourself between the blade and without hesitation. Why?" "She needed help," Jake said simply. "There wasn't time to think about it." "There is always time to think, to calculate risk versus reward, to consider your own survival." The Queen's golden eyes were intense, searching. "But you did not do these things. You simply acted to protect her. This is not normal behavior in the galaxy." Jake did not know how to respond to that. On Earth, jumping to protect someone in danger seemed like basic human decency. But apparently, in the larger galaxy, such actions were rare. "I have been speaking with your Captain Hammond," the Queen continued. "She told me about human protective instincts, about how your species evolved on a dangerous world and survived by protecting each other, especially the young and vulnerable. She says this is built into your nature at a fundamental level." The Queen stood, looking down at Jake with an expression he could not read. "The grow bolder. They nearly killed my daughter in a neutral station in front of dozens of witnesses. If they are willing to be so brazen, they will try again. My own guards proved inadequate." Jake felt a cold sense of dread growing in his stomach. He had a feeling he knew where this was going. "I am making a decree," Queen said formally. "You, Jake, have proven yourself more capable of protecting my daughter than any warrior. Therefore, I am assigning you as Princess' personal guardian for the next cycle. You will live in the royal palace. You will accompany her everywhere, and any harm that comes to you will be considered an attack on the royal family itself." "Your Majesty, I don't think," Jake started. "This is not a request," the Queen interrupted. "It is a command. I am well aware that this is unprecedented. No human has ever been given such a position in society, but my daughter's life is worth more than tradition. You will accept this assignment." She moved toward the door, then paused. "You saved when my own people failed. That debt extends to me as well, though I will never speak of it publicly. Recover quickly, Jake. You have much to learn about customs before you can properly serve as her guardian." After she left, Jake lay in bed, his mind racing. Personal guardian to an alien princess, living in a royal palace on another world. This was far beyond anything he had signed up for when he joined the diplomatic corps. Amy came back in, reading something on her data pad. She looked up and saw Jake's expression. "You look like someone just changed your entire life." "The Queen wants me to be the princess's bodyguard for a whole year." Amy whistled softly. "Well, that's going to make things interesting. A human in the royal court. That's never happened before." I tried to say no. "Let me guess she didn't give you a choice." Amy smiled sympathetically. "Queens don't really do requests. They command and people obey. But look at it this way, Jake. This could be huge for human-alien relations. You'll be representing Earth at the highest levels of society." "I just wanted to help someone who was in danger," Jake said quietly. "I didn't want to become some kind of symbol." "Too late for that, I'm afraid." Amy checked his vital signs one more time. "The whole galaxy is talking about the human who shielded the princess. You're famous now, whether you wanted to be or not." Over the next few days, as Jake's injuries slowly healed, the reality of his new situation sank in. Captain Hammond visited and confirmed that the assignment was official. Earth's government had agreed, seeing the political advantage of having a human so close to the powerful empire. Princess came by every day, bringing items from her and telling Jake about culture. She seemed genuinely excited about having him as her guardian, though Jake suspected she did not fully understand what she was asking of him. On his 5th day in medical care, Commander came to visit. He was a high-ranking military officer, tall and imposing with scars marking his dark blue skin. He looked at Jake with barely concealed disdain. "So you are the human who will guard the princess," said, his voice cold. "Do not think that one lucky moment makes you a true warrior. You will be tested, human, and when you fail, you will be sent back to your primitive world in disgrace." After left, Jake stared at the ceiling of his medical room. He had gone from a routine security assignment to being thrust into alien politics, royal intrigue, and apparently the target of resentment from military leaders. All because he had acted on instinct to protect someone in danger. It seemed absurd. But as he touched the life-stone pendant had given him, Jake made a quiet decision. He had not asked for this responsibility, but he would not run from it either. If the queen wanted him to protect her daughter, then he would do it to the best of his ability. Even if it meant facing challenges he could barely imagine. Prime was beautiful in a way that made Jake's eyes hurt. The entire capital city seemed to be made of crystal and light, towers rising toward the purple sky in impossible spirals. 3 moons hung in the daytime sky, casting overlapping shadows that danced across the streets. Jake stood on the landing platform of the royal palace, still adjusting to the lighter gravity of this world. His back had healed surprisingly well thanks to medicine, leaving only a rough scar that the doctors said would fade in time. The pain was mostly gone now, replaced by a constant awareness of the burned tissue beneath his uniform. "It is overwhelming at first," Princess said beside him. She had insisted on being there when Jake arrived, despite her mother's suggestion that he be given time to settle in. "But you will grow accustomed to it. Our world is different from yours, but not so different that you cannot adapt." "It's amazing," Jake admitted. "Earth has beautiful cities, but nothing like this." A group of guards approached, led by Commander. They wore ceremonial armor that gleamed in the triple moonlight, and their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. Jake recognized that look. He had seen it before in human military units when an outsider joined their ranks. "So the human has arrived," said. "Welcome to Prime, Jake. I hope you are prepared for what awaits you here. Guarding our princess is not a task for the weak or unprepared." "I understand, Commander," Jake replied carefully. "I'll do my best." "Your best," laughed without humor. "We shall see if that is sufficient. Follow me. The Queen has commanded that you be given quarters in the palace, though many of us question this decision." They walked through corridors of polished stone that seemed to glow with inner light. Other they passed stopped to stare at Jake, whispering among themselves. He was an oddity here, a primitive human in a place meant for royalty and elite warriors. His quarters turned out to be larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The room had a view of the city, a sleeping platform that adjusted to his preferences, and what looked like a small armory built into one wall. Everything was designed for proportions, making Jake feel small despite being average height for a human. "You will report for training at first light tomorrow," said. "The Queen may have commanded that you serve as the princess's guardian, but I will not allow an untrained outsider to hold such responsibility. You will prove your worth or you will fail. There is no middle ground." After left helped Jake unpack his few belongings. She seemed fascinated by everything he had brought from Earth, asking questions about simple items like his old watch or the photos of his family. "Do all humans value family so highly?" she asked, holding a picture of Jake with his parents and younger sister. "Most of us do," Jake said. "Family is important. They're the people who care about you no matter what." "Royal families are different," said quietly. "We are taught duty and honor first. Personal feelings come second, if at all. My mother loves me, I know, but she shows it through ensuring I am strong and capable, not through displays of emotion." She set the photo down carefully. "That is why what you did was so remarkable to us. You protected me not because of duty or honor, but because you felt I should be protected. That is not something we understand easily." Training the next morning was brutal. Commander put Jake through combat drills designed for warriors, whose natural strength exceeded human capabilities. Jake struggled but refused to quit, drawing on every bit of military training he had received on Earth. The guards watched with mixed reactions. Some seemed impressed by his determination. Others clearly saw his difficulty as proof that humans did not belong in their elite ranks. "You are too slow," said after Jake failed to block a simulated attack for the 3rd time. "Too weak. How can you protect the princess when you cannot even defend yourself?" "Maybe I defend differently than you do," Jake said, catching his breath. "I'm not going to match your strength or speed, but I can think differently, react differently." "Show me," challenged. Jake studied the training scenario, a simulation of an attack in a crowded marketplace. The approach was direct and confrontational, using their superior physical abilities to overwhelm threats. But Jake saw other options, using the environment, creating obstacles, misdirection. He ran the simulation again, this time employing human tactics. Instead of meeting the attackers head-on, he used the crowd for cover, created choke points, and struck at unexpected angles. The simulation ended with the attackers neutralized and the princess safely extracted. Stared at the results, unconventional, undisciplined, but effective. He looked at Jake with something approaching respect. Perhaps there is more to human combat methods than I assumed. Over the following weeks, Jake settled into his new role. He accompanied everywhere, learning the complex protocols of royal life. He attended diplomatic functions, stood guard during council meetings, and adapted to a world that operated by rules very different from Earth. Princess proved to be more than just his assignment. She was curious about everything, especially human culture and thinking. They spent hours talking about the differences between their species, their worlds, their ways of seeing the universe. "My tutors taught me that strength and honor are everything," said one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. "That showing mercy is weakness, that emotions cloud judgment, but you do not believe these things, do you?" "Strength and honor are important," Jake agreed. "But mercy isn't weakness. It's a choice to be strong and still show compassion. And emotions don't cloud judgment if you understand them. They give you information about what matters." Considered this. When you threw yourself in front of that blade, you made an emotional choice. You felt I should be protected, so you acted. But the result was effective. You saved my life. Perhaps emotions can be a form of wisdom. Price arrived a month into Jake's assignment. She was a human liaison officer, sent by Earth to support him and handle communications. She brought news from home and helped Jake navigate the complicated political landscape he had fallen into. "You're a big deal back on Earth," told him over dinner in his quarters. "The human who impressed the multiple species have been asking about our military training, our protective instincts, all because of what you did." "I just did what felt right," Jake said. "That's exactly what makes it significant," smiled. "You didn't try to be impressive or calculate political advantage. You just helped someone who needed it. That authenticity is resonating across the galaxy." But not everyone was impressed. Tensions continued with some guards who resented Jake's position. There were minor incidents, equipment that mysteriously malfunctioned, training schedules that put him at disadvantages. Nothing Jake could prove was intentional, but the pattern was clear. The real test came when intelligence reports began arriving about new activity. They were planning something, positioning assets near space, moving with purpose toward an unknown goal. Queen summoned Jake to a private meeting. She studied him with those intense golden eyes, then spoke bluntly. "There will be an attempt on my daughter's life during the Festival of Light next week. We have intercepted communications suggesting they have corrupted members of our own nobility. The attack will come from inside our defenses." "Then cancel the festival," Jake said immediately. "I cannot. To do so would show weakness, and weakness invites more attacks. The festival will proceed, and you will help Commander ensure my daughter's safety." Working with proved surprisingly productive. The commander had initially resented Jake, but respect had grown between them through the weeks of training. Understood tactics and psychology. Jake brought human perspectives on threat assessment and unconventional defense strategies. "Your people think very differently from ours," admitted as they reviewed security plans. "When I see a threat, I think of how to overpower it. You think of how to redirect it, confuse it, turn its own force against itself. It is strange, but I am beginning to see the value in such approaches." They worked for days, blending military strength with human tactical creativity. But even with all their planning, Jake felt uneasy. Something was missing. some element they had not accounted for. Princess found him on the palace balcony the night before the festival, staring up at the three moons. She stood beside him in comfortable silence for a while before speaking. "You are worried," she said. "It was not a question." "Yeah, tomorrow is going to be dangerous, and I'm not sure we've thought of everything." "I trust you," said simply. "You have protected me before. You will protect me again if needed. But more than that, you have taught me something important. You have shown me that there are different kinds of strength, that choosing to protect others is not weakness, even if it puts yourself at risk." She looked up at the moons. "When I become queen one day, I want to lead differently than my mother. I want to value the things you have shown me: compassion, emotional wisdom, protection not through domination but through genuine care. You have changed how I see the world, Jake." "I hope that's a good thing," Jake said. "It is, though I suspect it will make my mother's advisors very uncomfortable," smiled slightly. "Change often does." As Jake lay in his quarters that night, unable to sleep before the festival, he thought about how much his life had changed. 2 months ago, he had been a routine security officer at a diplomatic summit. Now he was guardian to an alien princess, living in a crystal palace on another world, about to face unknown threats from enemies who hid among allies. He touched the scar on his back, a reminder of the moment that had started all of this. He had acted on instinct, on basic human impulse to protect someone in danger. That single choice had brought him here to a place and role he never could have imagined. Tomorrow would bring the festival and with it danger. But Jake was ready. He had learned customs, earned the respect of their warriors, and formed a genuine friendship with the princess he was sworn to protect. Whatever came next, he would face it the only way he knew how, with courage, creativity, and the fundamental human belief that some things were worth protecting, no matter the cost. The Festival of Light began at dawn, when all three moons set simultaneously below the horizon. Jake watched from his position near Princess as thousands of citizens gathered in the great ceremonial square. The air filled with music from instruments that created sounds unlike anything on Earth, harmonies that seemed to resonate in his bones. Wore ceremonial robes of gold and silver that caught the first rays of sunlight, making her seem to glow. She looked nervous despite her training, and Jake did not blame her. She had to walk among her people today, showing herself to them as tradition demanded. And somewhere in that crowd, enemies waited. Commander stood on the opposite side of the square, coordinating security forces through a communication device in his ear. Jake wore a similar device, keeping him connected to the security network. Over 50 guards were positioned throughout the crowd, all watching for threats, but Jake's instincts still whispered warnings he could not ignore. "Are you ready?" Jake asked quietly. "No," she admitted, "but that does not matter. Duty requires this of me." The ceremony began with ancient words spoken by the high priest, a wizard whose skin had faded to pale with age. Princess stepped forward, performing the ritual movements that her ancestors had performed for thousands of years. She lit the first ceremonial flame, symbolizing the light of the people spreading across the darkness of space. The crowd responded with a traditional chant, thousands of voices rising together. It should have been beautiful, but to Jake, it was just noise that made detecting threats more difficult. His eyes scanned constantly, looking for anything out of place. Cole appeared at Jake's elbow, seemingly from nowhere. The human intelligence officer looked casual, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "We've got a problem," he said quietly. "Fresh intel just came through. They didn't just corrupt nobility. They've got people inside the security forces themselves." Jake's blood ran cold. "How many?" "Unknown, but the attack is definitely coming today. Could be in the next few minutes." Glanced at the princess. "The ceremonial walk is the most vulnerable moment. When she moves through the crowd, that's when they'll strike." "We should abort," Jake said into his communication device. "Did you hear that?" "I heard," His voice was tense. But we cannot stop the ceremony now without proof of immediate threat. It would cause a panic and dishonor the royal family. We proceed, but with elevated alertness. All teams report status. The security teams checked in one by one. Everything appeared normal, but Jake knew that meant nothing if the enemy was already inside their perimeter, wearing the uniform of allies. Princess completed the lighting ceremony and began her walk among the people. This was the moment everyone had come to see, when the heir to the throne showed herself to her subjects, demonstrating trust and connection. She moved slowly, guards forming a loose circle around her that allowed citizens to approach and offer blessings. Jake stayed close, every nerve on edge. He watched faces in the crowd, looking for signs of hostility or unusual focus. He noted escape routes, obstacles, anything that could be used defensively if needed. The first explosion came from the eastern edge of the square, not close enough to harm the princess, but loud and dramatic, sending a column of smoke into the sky. The crowd panicked immediately, people running in all directions. Guards from that section rushed toward the explosion, responding to the obvious threat. "That's the distraction," Jake said into his communication device. "The real attack is coming now. Stay focused on the princess." He was already moving, positioning himself between and the thickest part of the crowd. His human instincts were screaming now, that primal sense that had kept his ancestors alive on Earth's dangerous plains. A noble approached through the chaos, wearing robes that marked him as part of the royal court. Lord, if Jake remembered correctly. Behind him came several other in ceremonial guard uniforms. They looked legitimate, moved with authority, but something about their formation was wrong. "Your Highness," called out, "please come with us. We must get you to safety immediately." His voice crackled in Jake's ear. "Those guards are not ours. I repeat, those are not our personnel." Jake stepped in front of Princess. "She's not going anywhere with you." His expression changed, friendly concern replaced by cold calculation. The human guard dog shows his teeth. How amusing. Step aside or die. The fake guards dropped their pretense, hands moving to weapons concealed beneath their uniforms. Plasma rifles, Jake noted, compact but deadly. The crowd around them scattered, screaming. "Get back," Jake said too, not taking his eyes off the attackers. "There are 6 of them," said, her voice shaking but controlled. "You are alone." "I've had worse odds." It was not true, but Jake tried to sound confident anyway. The attack came fast. The disguised opened fire, plasma bolts screaming through the air. Jake moved, using combat techniques combined with human unpredictability. He grabbed a ceremonial banner pole and used it to deflect one shot, then threw himself into a roll that brought him behind a decorative column. Return fire came from his position. Real guards engaged though, but they had to be careful. Thousands of civilians were still in the area, running in panic. The fake guards used this to their advantage, positioning themselves where they could not shoot without risking innocent lives. Jake saw moving toward the princess, a small plasma pistol in his hand. The noble was not a trained fighter, but he did not need to be at close range. Backed away, her own guards trying to reach her but blocked by the crowd and crossfire. Human speed and creativity against noble with a gun. Jake did not like those odds, but he had no choice. He sprinted from his cover, zigzagging to make himself a harder target. Fired twice, both shots missing by inches that felt like miles. Jake hit low, a tackle that would have made his old football coaches proud. They crashed to the ground together and Jake immediately went for the weapon. Was stronger than he looked, fighting desperately. The plasma pistol discharged between them, its bolt burning past Jake's ear. Then was there, his armored fist connecting with his face with a sound like a hammer striking stone. The noble went limp, yanked Jake to his feet with one hand, already turning to address the remaining threats. "Behind the column now," commanded, pushing Jake toward better cover. Protect the princess. We will handle the others. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Guards systematically neutralized the infiltrators with brutal efficiency. But one of the disguised broke away from the fight, running toward a group of civilians. He grabbed a child, a girl no more than 6 years old, and held a plasma blade to her throat. "Safe passage," the shouted in accented, "or the child dies." The guards froze. Protocol in hostage situations was clear. Preserve innocent life at all costs. Do not risk civilians for tactical advantage. It was the one rule every warrior followed without question. But Jake had grown up on Earth, where hostage situations happened regularly. Human law enforcement had developed tactics for exactly this scenario. Tactics that required split-second timing and acceptance of significant personal risk. He moved before anyone could stop him, before could order him to stand down. Jake approached from an angle, hands raised, making himself the focus of attention. "You don't want to do this," Jake said calmly. "You're already surrounded. Killing her won't get you out of here." "Stay back, human," the snarled. The blade pressed against the child's throat. She whimpered in fear but did not struggle. "I'm just talking," Jake said, still advancing slowly. "Let's work this out. You want safe passage. Maybe we can negotiate." The eyes followed Jake, tracking his movement. That was what Jake needed. The split second of divided attention. He moved fast, using a technique called dynamic entry in Earth's special forces. Low, explosive forward momentum combined with precise targeting. Jake's shoulder hit the weapon arm, driving it away from the child's throat. His other hand grabbed the girl, pulling her free. They tumbled together, Jake curling his body around the child protectively as they hit the ground. The swung his blade but was already there. The commander's fist struck like a piston, and the dropped like a stone. Jake uncurled, checking the child for injuries. She was terrified but unharmed. Her mother rushed forward, taking her daughter with tears streaming down her face. The crowd that had witnessed the rescue was silent, staring at the human who had risked himself for a child. Then was there, kneeling beside Jake. "You saved her," she said, her voice full of wonder. "Just like you saved me. You did not hesitate, did not calculate. You just acted to protect an innocent." Jake felt pain blooming in his side where this blade had caught him during the struggle. Not deep, but bleeding steadily. He tried to wave it off. "She's just a kid. Someone had to help her." "Someone did," said, looking down at Jake with an expression of profound respect. "You did, again." Medical personnel arrived, insisting on treating Jake's wound immediately. As they worked, he watched the ceremonial square slowly return to order. Security forces had captured all the attackers. The immediate threat was over. But Jake could see citizens watching him, talking among themselves. The human who had shielded their princess had just saved one of their children. Word would spread quickly, he knew. In a culture that valued strength and honor above all else, he had demonstrated both in ways they could not ignore. Princess stayed beside him while the medics worked. "You were wounded again because of me, because of your duty to protect me." "That girl had nothing to do with you," Jake pointed out. "I helped her because she needed it." "Exactly," said softly. "And that is what my people are beginning to understand. You do not protect because of duty or honor or political advantage. You protect because you believe protection is right. That is a kind of strength we have forgotten." Queen arrived, her royal guard surrounding her. She looked at the captured traitors, then at her daughter, then at Jake. Her expression was impossible to read, but when she spoke, her voice carried across the square. "The human Jake has proven himself twice now. He has shown that true strength lies not in dominating others but in protecting them. Let this be remembered." As the crowd slowly dispersed and the festival came to a subdued ending, Jake sat with his bandaged side and thought about the strange path his life had taken. He had come to this world as an outsider, resented and doubted. Now citizens approached to thank him, to touch his hand, to acknowledge what he had done. All because he had acted on simple human instinct, to protect those who needed protecting. The royal council chamber was silent as Queen reviewed the reports from the festival attack. Jake stood at attention near the wall, his side still bandaged but healing well thanks to medicine. Princess sat in her place of honor, while Commander and other military leaders occupied the council seats. Elder, the Queen's oldest advisor, spoke first. The threat has been neutralized. Lord and his co-conspirators await trial. The security protocols failed, but the princess is safe. I suggest we reward the human appropriately and return him to his people. His duty has been fulfilled. His duty has barely begun, Queen replied. And I did not call this council to discuss rewards. I called it to discuss the future. She stood, moving to the center of the chamber where holographic displays showed various galactic territories. The festival attack was the third attempt on my daughter's life in as many months. Each time, our enemies grow bolder. Each time, our traditional defenses prove inadequate. We are fighting tomorrow's wars with yesterday's thinking. The Queen gestured to Jake. This human has saved my daughter twice now, not through superior strength or advanced weapons, but through something we have lost: the instinct to protect others without calculation, the willingness to sacrifice oneself for the vulnerable. On his primitive world, these traits are common. In our galaxy, they are rare treasures. Your Majesty, said carefully, surely you do not suggest we emulate human behavior. We have ruled through strength and honor for. And that strength has made us rigid, said, her voice clear despite her youth. We calculate everything. We plan, we strategize, we follow protocols. But sometimes what is needed is not a plan but a heart that simply acts when action is needed. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Princess rarely spoke in official sessions, and her words carried the weight of future authority. I have spent months with Jake, continued. He has taught me more about true strength than any combat instructor. He showed me that choosing to protect others, even at cost to yourself, is not weakness. It is the highest form of courage, and I have seen how our people respond to it. They see in him something they have been taught to suppress: compassion, immediate care for others. These are not weaknesses to be eliminated. Commander stood. I once believed the human was unfit for his role. I challenged him, tested him, expected him to fail. But he has earned my respect through his actions. The way he thinks about security and protection is different from our methods, but it is effective. His tactical approaches have already improved our defensive protocols. The Queen nodded. Which brings us to the true purpose of this council. I propose a formal alliance between the Empire and humanity. Not merely trade agreements or diplomatic pleasantries, but genuine partnership. We offer our technology and resources. They offer their unique perspective and capabilities. An alliance? Elder looked shocked. Your Majesty, humans are barely spacefaring. They have been part of the galactic community for less than 2 decades. Such an alliance would elevate them far beyond their current status. Deservedly so, the Queen replied. I have studied humanity since Jake first protected my daughter. They survived on one of the most dangerous worlds in known space. They developed cooperation and mutual protection as survival traits. They possess creativity and adaptability that most species lack. And most importantly, they have not yet been corrupted by the cold calculations that dominate galactic politics. She looked directly at Jake. Tell me, Jake, when you threw yourself between that blade and my daughter, what were you thinking? Jake hesitated. He had never been comfortable being the center of attention in these formal settings. I wasn't thinking, Your Majesty. I just saw someone who needed help and I reacted. Exactly, the Queen said, turning back to her council. No calculation of personal risk, no consideration of political implications, simply immediate action to protect another being. That is what we have lost in our pursuit of perfect logic, the capacity for spontaneous compassion. Ambassador Foster entered the chamber. his arrival announced by guards. The human diplomat looked slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur of the council, but he composed himself quickly. "Your Majesty," Foster said with a respectful bow, "I bring word from Earth. Multiple species have contacted humanity in recent weeks, requesting information about our protective instincts, our training methods, our cultural values. What began with Jake's actions has created unprecedented interest in human capabilities." "I am aware," the Queen replied. "I have received similar inquiries, which is why I am proposing not just an alliance but something more, a new institution that will change how species interact across the galaxy." She activated another holographic display, showing a proposed organizational structure. "I call it the Guardian Corps, a multinational force dedicated not to conquest or domination, but to protection. Warriors from various species, trained to shield others from harm, led by humans who understand this principle instinctively." The council erupted in shocked conversation. Such an organization had never existed. Military forces protected their own species, their own territories. The idea of a unified protective force that served all species equally was revolutionary. "This is absurd," protested. "We cannot trust our security to aliens, no matter how impressive one human has been." "I do not suggest we replace our security forces," the Queen clarified. "The Guardian Corps would operate differently. They would be deployed in situations where multiple species are involved, where traditional military thinking has failed, where protection requires more than just force." She looked at Jake again. "And I want Jake to lead the first class of recruits. He will teach them what he has shown us, that true guardianship requires not just skill, but the right mindset, the willingness to act without hesitation when others need protection." Jake felt dizzy. Lead in protective force, train aliens in human protective instincts. It was far beyond anything he had imagined. "Your Majesty, I'm just a security officer. I'm not qualified to—" "You are the most qualified person in the galaxy," interrupted, "because you do not see it as a qualification. You simply see it as doing what is right. That authenticity is exactly what the Guardian Corps needs." Over the following weeks, Jake watched as his simple act of protection rippled outward in ways he could never have predicted. Ambassador Foster negotiated the formal alliance between Earth and the Empire, with terms that dramatically elevated humanity's status in galactic politics. Other species took notice, and more diplomatic contacts followed. The Guardian Corps took shape slowly, with volunteers from multiple species applying for positions. Jake worked with Commander to develop training programs that blended combat skills with human protective philosophies. It was challenging work, trying to teach aliens concepts that felt natural to humans but foreign to species raised on different values. Price became his administrative support, handling the overwhelming logistics of building an organization from scratch. She often reminded Jake that he had become a symbol, whether he wanted to be or not, the human who cared more about protecting others than his own safety. Princess remained his closest friend through it all. Their relationship had evolved beyond guardian and protected. She had become someone he genuinely cared about, and she felt the same. They spent hours discussing philosophy, culture, and what it meant to lead with compassion in a galaxy that often valued strength over kindness. "I will be queen one day," said during one of their evening walks through the palace gardens. "Probably sooner than I would like. My mother grows weary of the constant political battles. When that day comes, I want to rule differently, to value the lessons you have taught me." "I didn't teach you anything," Jake said. "You already had compassion inside you. I just showed you it was okay to let it out." "Perhaps, but you gave me permission to be different from what was expected. That is a gift beyond measure." She touched the life-stone pendant she had given him months ago, which he still wore. "In culture, this symbolizes a debt that cannot be repaid, but I think it has become something else now, a symbol of connection between our peoples." The first Guardian Corps graduation ceremony took place 6 months after the festival attack. 20 recruits from 7 different species stood in formation, having completed the intensive training program. They wore uniforms that combined elements from each of their cultures, symbolizing unity while respecting diversity. Jake stood on the platform beside Queen and Princess, watching the graduates with pride. They had struggled at first, these warriors from different worlds with different values. But they had learned to work together, to protect each other, to see beyond species boundaries. "You should be proud," the Queen said quietly. "You have created something unprecedented, a force that exists not to conquer but to protect. It will change the galaxy." "I just wanted to help people," Jake replied, still uncomfortable with the praise. "And in doing so, you have helped entire civilizations." The Queen smiled slightly, an expression Jake had rarely seen on her usually stern face. "The human who shielded my daughter has become the human who teaches the galaxy a better way." After the ceremony, Jake found a quiet moment alone on one of the palace balconies. He looked up at the stars, thinking about the strange journey that had brought him here. A routine diplomatic mission, a split-second decision to protect someone in danger. And now he stood at the center of galactic politics, leading an organization that might actually make the universe a little safer. "Reflecting on your accomplishments," Commander joined him at the railing. "You have earned that right." "I'm reflecting on how weird my life has become," Jake said with a slight laugh. "A year ago, I was filing security reports and complaining about boring assignments. Now I'm training alien warriors in human protective instincts." "The galaxy needed someone like you," said simply. "Someone who acts from the heart without overthinking. We had forgotten what that looks like. You reminded us." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before spoke again. "I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I believed you were inadequate, weak, unworthy of protecting our princess. I was wrong about all of it." "You were just protecting what mattered to you," Jake said. "I understand that." "That is exactly what I mean," gestured at Jake. "You understand. You do not hold grudges or demand recognition. You simply do what needs doing and move forward. That is true warrior spirit, even if it looks different from what we were taught." Jake returned to his quarters that night to find a message waiting from Earth. His family wanted to know when he might visit home. He realized with surprise that it had been nearly a year since he had left. So much had changed. But as he composed his response, Jake knew he could not stay on Earth for long. His work was here now, on Prime and across the galaxy. The Guardian Corps needed him. Princess and Queen needed him. And honestly, he needed them too. They had become his family in ways that transcended species or culture. Princess knocked on his door later that evening, carrying 2 cups of a warm beverage she knew he liked. They sat together on his balcony, watching the 3 moons rise over the Crystal City. "The Council approved funding for 3 more Guardian Corps training facilities," said. "One here, one on a neutral station, and one on Earth. Your people will help train the next generation of Guardians." "That's good," Jake said. "The more people who understand these principles, the safer everyone becomes." "You changed my world," said quietly. "Not just politically or diplomatically. You changed how I see everything. What it means to be strong, what it means to lead, what it means to truly care about others." "You were already becoming that person," Jake replied. "I just happened to be there when you needed a different perspective. You shielded me from a blade, but more importantly, you shielded me from becoming like so many other royals. Cold, calculating, caring more about power than people." Smiled. "When I become queen, I will remember that. Protection is not just about physical safety. It is about protecting what makes us good." Jake looked out at the city, at the alien world that had become his home. He thought about that moment at the diplomatic summit when he had seen danger and simply reacted. No grand plan, no calculated strategy, just the instinct to protect someone who needed it. That one moment had changed everything. not just for him but for countless others. The alliance between humans and had opened new doors across the galaxy. The Guardian Corps was teaching species to work together, to value protection over conquest. And somewhere out there, people were safer because of it. Queen found them there an hour later, two young people from different worlds sitting together in comfortable friendship. She observed them for a moment before speaking. "You shielded my daughter when you had every reason to run," the Queen said, her voice carrying the weight of deep respect. "Now the galaxy watches to see what other wonders your species will achieve. You have shown us something we thought we had, the simple courage to care about others more than ourselves. Do not lose that, Jake. It is humanity's greatest gift." Jake stood and bowed respectfully. "I won't, Your Majesty, that's a promise." As the Queen left, Jake settled back into his seat beside. The three moons hung full in the purple sky, casting their triple shadows across a world that had once been alien but now felt like home. He had been a simple security officer who made a split-second choice to protect someone in need. That choice had rippled outward, changing lives, changing policies, changing how species saw each other. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that humans had known all along. Protecting others was not weakness. It was the truest form of strength. And sometimes, one person choosing to shield another could change an entire galaxy.